because I always also feel that whoever comes into our life, who we're drawn to, is there, and we're drawn to them for a reason, because they're showing us parts of ourselves that are reflecting them. Whenever we have strong likes or dislikes connected to, it feels like that's where we need to work.
I mean, there are obviously across the globe in all of the world wisdom traditions, there are innumerable examples and models of masculine deities that we can draw from. I was particularly curious about this in this like in your Vedic lineage, if there was any sort of analogous mapping on the masculine side. But it sounds like it exists even within the goddess, which I think is really beautiful. And we know the world needs more goddess leadership right now. So I think we can find the masculine within these goddess deities. I think that's super helpful.
And that's what's so unique, right? Because the feminine is the birth giver, even biologically, right? So it's like he is contained within she. So, she kind of carries the whole universe. Like there's the stories about how the goddess Siddhidatri in step 9 or chakra 9 is who has imbued the gods with the ability to give their seed and to, basically carry the seed of creation and to be able to do all of these different things. So it's an interesting illustration even of how the goddess is really worshipped and revered by yogis, sages, saints, and savants of all the different masculine types as well. So that's like really, really interesting. And I feel that there's definitely a lot of masculine deities for sure in the Vedic spiritual tradition. Even in this book, Lord Shiva is coming up a lot as the kind of consort to Goddess Durga and the sort of masculine counterpart of Goddess Durga. It's interesting because a lot of times they show pictures which actually are so intertwined of Shiva and Shakti that it's like half and half, right? So it's like Shiva is half Shakti and Shakti is half of Shiva. So I would say like with this particular book, it feels like Lord Shiva is an interesting one, but in general, what we also understand of divine masculine and divine feminine in the Vedic tradition is that the masculine energy is called Purusha, which is the pure consciousness, which is kind of unchanging, unmoving stillness that we connect with in the depths of our introspection and in meditative states. Then we have Prakriti, which is the divine feminine expression and power, and Shakti, which is taking that seed of consciousness and multiplying and expressing and having this wild, abundant creativity. So Shiva is actually inert matter or inert consciousness, and Prakriti is the matter which brings that inert consciousness to life and to movement and to expression. So even in that, it's so opposite of what we know as like masculine being the outward kind of like penetrating quality and the feminine being sort of the receptive, nurturing kind of aspect. So even that kind of like understanding of feminine and masculine is sort of like turned the other way around. So it just depends what vantage point you're looking at it from.
Of course, yeah, it's kind of the form and emptiness, right? It's more of the masculine being the state of deep emptiness and that kind of imperturbable silence and deep stillness, and then the feminine being the form, all form of creation, the manifest world, all the different forms of that the earth can take, or that creation takes. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that the reason why we have this kind of journey of transformation is because that Prakriti is transformation. Prakriti, creation, the feminine is constantly transforming, even in the life cycle of a female embodied person, especially if they give birth to another being or more than one being. The body goes through tremendous changes over the course of life. Whereas with the male body, it's not so much that way. Like a male body technically could be more or less unchanged from the time of coming into puberty until, the end of life. Obviously, there are some minor changes, but it's not like the whole body is kind of like morphing to hold another human and then like coming back into something else, and like, and having these cycles go on and then not having the cycles go on, and even like the journey of pregnancy. So these 9 steps are symbolic of the 9 months actually of pregnancy that the female body is undergoing. So of course there's not going to be a male equivalent of that, because
right, yeah, of
it
course.
wouldn't make sense to have one.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, one of the best analogies I heard for this is, this maybe only a few people will get this, but it's like AC DC, right? Like, it's in electricity. There's like alternate currents. Like, that's the experience of in a female body of like every moon cycle and pregnancy, and like the hormones are just going up and down and up and down. And for the male experience, it's DC, direct current. It's just steady, right? So
Yeah.
it's that's kind of, again, like consciousness and light, right? Emptiness and form. Shiva Shakti. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But it is interesting because Lord Krishna is also coming up a lot, even in this book, because it's the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, which is of Lord Krishna. And I write about how I've also connected with that within myself, because in step 2, I feel like I approached relationships more like the goddess Radha, who is very devoted to someone, at that deep level, without even having a physical connection anymore. And that's how I had felt about the boyfriend I had in chapter 2. And I just kept him in my heart for such a long time, without having any contact, because it didn't feel right to have contact with him during that time. And then realizing that, wow, that was a long time to be devoted to someone who wasn't even physically in my life. And I need to do things differently now. So if I was like Radha and he was like Krishna, then I need to find Krishna within myself, and that was part of the healing actually in step 8, to then realize that women can also kind of embody what we see in a lot of male identifying people, which is this idea of not committing right away, but really checking out the field and having fun in the process, and not feeling rushed, to like select someone and to be committed before it feels like we've done the proper discernment about whether this is the right fit for us, and not just committing to one. So I feel like Lord Krishna then became an interesting teacher of the power of rejuvenation, because Krishna himself is youthful, is playful, is obviously profoundly wise, and also a warrior, but dancing on the crocodiles as he's engaging in his battles. And like, what a amazing, interesting deity, right? Like, what an interesting idea that when we have mastered the power of transcendence, we can just be like Krishna, like a cute flute playing, fun loving, wise, powerful warrior teacher uh, being, right? And like, I really have connected with that energy of the divine masculine to even understand Durga as Mahagauri, and what rejuvenation actually means, and what having a new beginning actually means. Because, in a sense, it was my own finding my own divine completion. That if I've always been like the devoted goddess Radha, who is in love with Krishna but never becomes his wife, and he's meanwhile got all kinds of wives, then why can't I find that Krishna consciousness within myself too, and actually have this new experience of dating and meeting new people, and just being open without feeling like, oh, I need to, like have this be sorted out or be rushed by a biological clock or something like that. And that's where, all the Ayurvedic practices I think are also really powerful and empowering for women especially, right? Because we are the ones who physically reproduce. And so to have this opportunity to really be able to prolong your health, like prolong your longevity, and by having a foundation of amazing health. And how like Krishna really feels like a great representative of that because of that eternal kind of youthfulness that he has. And just taking that spirit into even like partner selection, for example, it just makes it a lot less torture and hard on the soul and hard on the heart and emotions to like, oh, let me just play and have fun with a lot of people with the foundation of brahmacharya so that I don't get hurt in the process and I don't have to suffer in the process. So when I have that self control, then it's like, oh, let me just screen people, let me evaluate people, let me just like have fun without caring so much about the outcome and without being so invested in what happens and when it happens, because it's all, anyways, a play of our own karma, right? So,
Mm.
this area of great distress and pressure and,
Mm-hmm.
so many things I feel can be imbued with that lightness and that kind of spirit of play, which I find in the masculine divine in Lord Krishna. So, I feel that they can all be kind of drawn in. And actually, I'm very curious about that myself. And I hope if anyone is listening who knows how there could be a divine masculine counterpart at each of the 9 steps, it would be fun to just talk and see how that could work, right? Because obviously, Lord Shiva is there, and then Krishna comes into the 8th one, and Skanda is a male deity, right? So the baby Skanda is a divine masculine counterpart already. So already we got 3, and maybe there's like
Mm-hmm.
6 more, like maybe Hanuman, the monkey god, could be a good one at some
Yes,
level. I
yes.
just don't know them as much as I do
Yeah.
these 9. So that just makes it a fun new exploration, right? To see like what those energies may be.
All right. I sense another book coming. All right. So yeah, I mean, it brings to mind for me this idea that actually we've talked about on the show before, this idea of like an intermarriage, where if we really
Yeah.
can pull into ourselves like in a deep way, not project all of my unmet needs around my feminine onto a potential partner or the people around me, and I can actually take the time and pull that back into myself. It usually requires some sort level of kind of um brahmacharya or a cleanse or a reset, but I pull the all of those desires back into myself. And I've had some very deep experiences around this. I quite literally had like this deity that was like a Beltane deity come to me in a deep meditation that was just like this kind of maiden figure, and kind of like just frankly just like sat on my lap, and it was so clearly it was not any woman I'd ever met. It was an aspect of the divine that came and sat with me, and the practice for me was actually to like now turn around and become her. And in
Mm.
a place of deep meditation, what's it like if I become her, and what's the wisdom she has as she's looking back into my own eyes?
Wow.
And what can she see about my life, and what do I need? And then from there, not just the maiden, but I found myself in this like crone energy, this like 80-year-old me as an 80-year-old woman, not a 44-year-old man, but an 80-year-old woman looking back upon me. And what's the wisdom she has for me? And in that process, marry those, and like quite literally in one of these kind of like we talk about this a little bit in my episode with Kamala Devi McClure. So for people that are interested in this, go back and listen to that. We talk about this a bit, and in that ritual, I actually did like a hand fasting of like marrying myself, my inner masculine and feminine, for a year and a day, where the commitment was purely to meet my own needs in a certain way, and
Hmm.
to commit to nourishing myself from the view of my both internal feminine and masculine, right? My goddess, my god. And when we can do that, we're so much more resourced and available and grounded in our own being. And then we can, as you say, like dating becomes so much more interesting, right? And there's just like a clear headedness about it. The screening is not coming from this place of like unmet needs. It's
Yes.
coming from a place
Yes.
of real generativity and honest kind of like attraction to someone's essence rather than like trying to fill a hole. So,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's so beautiful. Yeah, that divine completion, the inner marriage, the feeling of connecting with our own wholeness. I mean, that's what then sets up the potential for a much more meaningful relationship, I feel too. So That's so amazing. I've never heard anyone talk about that before, have those kinds of experiences. So I find it really, really fascinating. And I do have quite a few male students, like in male identifying bodies. And they, I think, do also connect with this idea that you're talking about of really meeting their own needs in that nurturing kind of sense of the feminine, and even like learning to cook and learning to kind of give themselves what they would look for from a feminine energy. And it's very empowering. I feel like this is a really, really fascinating territory. And this itself is something I'm also exploring for another like program or book or something about how you can actually become what you're looking for, and then what you're looking for can just be a beautiful mirror or reflection onto who you are, right? So that way it's because I always also feel that whoever comes into our life, who we're drawn to, is there, and we're drawn to them for a reason because they're showing us parts of ourselves that are reflecting them and reflecting whatever it is we're attracted to, or repulsed by, but strongly, right? Whenever we have strong likes or dislikes connected to, it feels like that's where we need to work. And so, what would it take to actually just turn the lens inward and say, oh, thank you for showing that about me. Let me go fix that or heal that rather within myself, right? And then see who is reflected once my essence is fully recharged, right? And then just see like a beautiful mirror. Because ultimately, I feel all relationships of all kinds are really there for us to grow spiritually and to be able to learn and to evolve. And what if we had a guidepost to working with our feelings and our attractions and our repulsions and our judgments to just continue our own spiritual growth in any kind of
Hmm.
container of relationship?